So if your colorwork pattern has long floats, so more than an inch or so of stitches of the same color all in a row, then you're probably going to want to catch those floats somehow, especially if you're making something like a mitten or a sleeve where fingers can get caught on those long floats when you put your arm or your hand in. Traditionally, what you would do is trap those floats every few stitches. And there are a few different ways to do this, which I'm not going to get into here, but what they all have in common is they tend to show through on the front side of the fabric. Like the fabric doesn't look totally smooth in the front, or you're going to see a little bit of that contrast color, that stranding color show through where you trap the float. This technique fixes all of that, and I think it is just a lot better, more satisfying way to do color work that has some longer floats. And it also lets you have floats as long as you want. As long as you keep doing your invisible stranding every few stitches, you can just keep that float going as long as you feel like. So this swatch was made using invisible stranding, and as you can see, these blocks of color are totally smooth. We're not seeing any of the contrasting color showing through, so like this is all black. There's no gray showing through and no black showing through here. If we check out the back, we can see there is actually a column of stitches in the middle of each group of floats holding them together. This is essentially a second piece of fabric that's attached to the front at the bottom down here at the bottom of each ladder, and it's also connected at the top of each ladder up here. Those are the only places where this second piece of fabric is actually connected to the front of your work. In the middle here, where the stitches are connecting those floats, it's not connected to the front of the fabric at all. But because it's connected at the top and the bottom, that's going to prevent us from getting caught on the floats. Whatever direction we are, say putting our hand into a sleeve, we're not going to get caught on the floats at this top side or this bottom side. One other thing you'll notice about this swatch is that I worked it flat. A lot of knitters avoid working color work flat because purling in stranded color work can be kind of difficult. I really don't like to do it, so what I actually do is I knit backwards on the wrong side rows so that I am looking at the front of the fabric while I knit and I can really clearly see the colorwork pattern. So I'm going to make a second video, which I will also link, showing how to work colorwork backwards and also how to work invisible stranding when you are doing that. So check out below the video for that link. So now I'm going to take you through the steps. There are 4 steps in all, and I'll go through them slowly so you can get this down. So first of all, you're going to tension your yarn like you normally would for color work, however you like to do it. And for my purposes, we're going to say this dark color is the dominant color, which means I want it to be to the left of the gray. So I work color work with both yarns continental, but you can do it however you prefer. And let's just do 2 stitches at the edge to get started, 1 in each color. Okay, now I'm gonna make a block of 6 stitches of the black color, but in the middle, we're gonna add an invisible stranding stitch. So after 3 stitches, so that was 3 black stitches. Now, to add in an invisible stranding stitch, the first step is to bring both yarns to the front. Then pick up the running thread between stitches, just like you would if you were doing a make one increase. Actually, you're doing it like a make one left. So you're going to end up placing this on the left needle, front to back. So I'm going into the front of that running thread, creating a stitch on the needle like that. Now here's where you purl through the back loop. So I take this finger and I sort of press that piece of yarn to create a little loop, and I bring my needle through like that. So that's the back loop, and I'm bringing this needle through. Then the stranding color right now is gray. I'm knitting black. I want to see black. I want to hide gray. So I am going to work this stitch with gray. So we're purling it through the back loop like that, and off the needle. And we have created our first invisible stranding stitch. Notice how the yarn we want to see, the dark color, is running across the front of that stitch, which is going to hide it. So then we just continue knitting with the dark color. So 3 more stitches of black, and then we're going to do the same thing. We'll make a block of 6 stitches of gray. So now we've got our 6 black stitches with an invisible stranding stitch in the middle. So a really important thing to note here is we added an invisible stranding stitch. We did not increase. So remember, that stitch is its own, it's creating its own separate piece of fabric. It's not adding to the width of our project in front. It's separate. So when you're counting your stitches, do not count any of your added invisible stranding stitches. They don't count. Okay, so let's do this again, but this time we'll do gray. So 3 gray stitches, and then we are going to add a black invisible stranding stitch. So first, both yarns to the front, move them out of the way so that we can grab that running thread, bring it over the left needle front to back, and then through the back loop. And this time we are going to make a stitch with the black yarn. So I'm just going like that and off the needle. So this time the gray yarn crosses in front. It's going to hide our invisible stranding stitch, and then 3 more gray stitches, and we'll do 1 more block of color, but we'll do black 1 more time. And now we have created 3 invisible stranding stitches, and on the back it looks like this. So new stitch there, new stitch there, new stitch there, but they don't count. So I am now going to show you how to work an invisible stranding stitch once it's already there, when you are not changing the stranding color. So here I'm just doing another row with the same colors in the same place, the same colors being stranded. So I've worked up to the first invisible stranding stitch right here. So I'm going to bring both yarns to the front, and I'm just going to purl that invisible stranding stitch through the back loop. So I'm going to take my right needle and bring it through the back loop like so. And I'm going to work this with the gray yarn. So I'm bringing it around the needle counterclockwise and through. And that's it. That's all there is to it. So anytime you're not changing your stranding color, that's all you do. So let's say we wanted to change this to gray. All I have to do is change the color that I'm working it with. So I bring both yarns to the front, go through the back loop, and instead of working with black, I'm going to work with gray. And I just keep knitting. It's that simple. And then if you look at the back, you can start to see if I keep doing this black section, then this ladder is just going to change colors on the back, and my block of color is going to change colors on the front. So when you get to the point in your color work pattern where it changes and you no longer have this long float, this long stretch of the same color, and you want to get rid of those invisible stranding stitches. It's a 2-row process. So the first row is like this. So first, you know, working your color work pattern however it says to do it next. So I'm just going to go every other stitch in each color. Work up to the invisible stranding stitch, and then bring both yarns to the front and slip that invisible stranding stitch purlwise. And you're going to do that for each one of those invisible stranding stitches. Making sure that you keep your pattern consistent. Remember, this stitch does not count. So I'm going every other stitch, black, gray, black, gray. So make sure that you don't accidentally include that invisible stranding stitch when you are knitting your pattern. But that's all there is to it. So go all the way across, slipping those stitches, those invisible stranding stitches with the yarns in front. So the last step is to get rid of the invisible stranding stitches when we don't need them anymore. So on this row, the first thing I need to do is knit up to the place where I have 2 stitches of the same color next to each other. And then I'm going to look at those 2 stitches. If the actual stitch, the stitch that goes in front, is on the left, I'm going to knit them together. And the reason I'm going to knit them together is that I want this stitch on the left to end up on top and this invisible stranding stitch to end up behind. So if I come in this way, see how that brings the stitch on the left on top. I'll show you again with the next one. So we work up to the point where we have 2 in a row of the same color. So this time they're both dark. This time, however, the stranding stitch, the one that's sitting behind, is on the left. So again, we want the stitch in front to end up on top. So this time, in order for this stitch to be on top and not be twisted, we have to do sort of a partial slip, slip, knit. So first, we're going to reorient that stitch. So flip it around on the needle. So we're going to slip knitwise and then slip it back to the left needle. And then we're going to knit that together with the stranding stitch through the back loop. But make sure that you are knitting in pattern. So don't do what I just did, knit in the correct color. So that's all there is to it. So we have one more, 2 in a row that are gray. This time, just like the first time, the actual stitch is on the left, so we're just going to knit them together like that. And that will completely hide the stranding color, like magic. Ta-da! So this is Ladderback Jacquard, otherwise known as invisible stranding. It is truly an invisible way to get those long floats under control so you don't get caught in them, and give a little extra stretch to your colorwork fabric that has long floats. If you are working this flat, check out my other video, which I'll link, where I will tell you how to do it all backwards. It's not as hard as it sounds, I promise. Just takes a little getting used to.